Financial wellness. Reach out to them for advice at 855-DON-GINO. And now back to your hosts, Don Getling and Gino Franti.
Well, welcome back to the final quarter of our show. And as Don likes to say, it's the saddest quarter every single week, every Saturday at 9 a.m. on the Don and Gino Real Estate and Finance Show on your hometown station, AM 1220 KHTS. And we'd like to always invite you to donandgino.com where you could watch this streaming. And you could also access all the historical shows. I love going to the YouTube channel. You could look at 4 years of historical shows. I think it's probably in the 700s or 800s of videos now with all the top experts that we've interviewed over the last 4 years, who have given us a wealth of knowledge and insight into what's going to happen in the future. And today we talked a little bit about some things that we see that are potentially great future investments. I hope to look back on the show 2 years from now and say we were right. Hopefully it'll be sooner than that, but these were long-term type of things. And I want to finish up with real estate. You told a story about how you hit a home run with real estate and you struck out with real estate. And one of the things I'd like to talk to Rob, and this is Rob Schwartz with Premier College Guidance, showing us the way today in lieu of Don Getling, who's out having fun.
I don't know about showing the way, Gino, but at least being able to convey a couple of stories as a novice in this industry to people who might be listening at home or in their cars, and kind of conveying a sense of, hey, you know, you're not alone.
Yeah, well, and you know what I thought was a beautiful point is I've hit some home runs too in real estate, and I've also struck out. And the thing about real estate is you have to be willing to hit those home runs and you have to be willing to strike out if you're going to play in the game. And real estate is one of those things that you want to try and time it. You want to make educated, calculated decisions. The only time I struck out, I made an emotional decision. It was for my own personal residence. It was not for investment property. My investment properties I've done really, really well on because they're not emotional decisions. You just make mathematical decisions and you do well on them.
That's things in life across the board, not just real estate.
Yeah, so I urge you to, even if you're buying your personal residence, also take into consideration all aspects of it. And so take a look at the tax benefit. I think that's a great thing. Take a look at, are you a good saver or not? If you're a bad saver, if you don't have them, if you make great income, but you're a bad saver, real estate's probably the best investment you'll ever make because it forces you to save. You make a principal payment every single month. And over the long haul, historically, if you look at a 40, 50-year timeline, you will have compound growth on a tremendous sized asset with a lot of leverage because you could put very little down, as little as 0% if you're a veteran, 3.5% for an FHA loan, and even 5% or 3% for a conventional loan. So those days of having to put 20% down are gone. So you get tremendous leverage on a compounding asset. If you're a bad saver, real estate's probably right for you.
Gino, as speaking on behalf of the novice, I actually completely agree with you. I've seen, you know, prices come and prices go, and I've seen it cycle for many years now. And you got to be willing to get on the ride if you're going to enjoy it. And there's going to be pitfalls where your stomach is a little queasy. That's going to happen. That's perfectly normal. It's perfectly healthy. But I will say overall, the benefits outweigh the problems.
Yeah, and our fearless leader at Skyline Home Loans, Bill Dallas, our CEO, says you've got to be able to make it through the cycle. And in real estate, if you make it through the cycle, you will always win. So what you have to do during the good times is prepare yourself to make it through the cycle and make sure that, you know, I talk about people say, oh, I can't buy what I want. And be careful with that. I can't buy what I want. I totally understand that. But if you're renting a 2-bedroom, 2-bath, 800 square foot unit in Reseda, don't try to buy a 3,600 square foot house in Sherman Oaks. You know, that's the problem I see. And they say, oh, of course I can't afford that $1 million house I want. No, try to buy something maybe a little bit better, but if you're buying like for like, I guarantee you it's better than renting.
There's a lot more show that I know we also want to get to, and you would tease this, so I want to make sure we save enough time for it, which is the next bubble. We've talked about all these wonderful things that are out in the markets, all these opportunities for investment, the oil, the gold, construction opportunities to get into markets. What's the next problem? Now, I'm teasing it because I know
Debbie
the answer.
Downer.
Yeah, but it's also one that I actually happen to know, so I feel like I have some control in this discussion.
No, you know what's nice is the reason we're bringing it back to this is because I don't want you to think that we're like this mainstream media show that's all we're doing is pumping real estate and pumping all this great stuff happening in the economy. You know, you might be one of those that are looking at the negative side of this economy. There is some definitely negative things happening in this country and around the world, and we talked a little bit about what's happening in Greece and China, and those were negative things. But here at home, my fear and something you're very close to is I think the next potential problem that we're going to run into as a country is student debt. And Rob, enlighten us a little bit about student debt.
Well, let's make sure we're painting a fair picture. Student debt is any loan that a student or a parent, remember both are taking loans these days, are borrowing either privately or from a state or federal entity to put a child through college and or graduate school. The amount of student debt in this country is bonkers. I'm going to give
That's
you
a
number.
technical term, by the way. Technical term from Rob Schwartz with Premier College Guidance says it's bonkers.
Here's my definition of bonkers. $1.4 trillion.
That's 1/3 the national debt. Well, probably not. I'm probably not keeping up with that thing anymore. That thing's out of control.
It is a sizable chunk of American debt owned by American organizations and the federal government. And here's where it starts to get scary. First is the alarming cost of college. I read a report 2 days ago that said the cost of college year on year jumped 16% 1 year.
Wow.
Now here's the weird part. The cost of the college itself, the tuition, went up 2%.
Right.
So what happened?
The cost of finance.
I'll come back to a positive side here, Gino. The reason the majority of that percentage increased was because families felt comfortable. Families didn't feel like, for the first time in a while, well, you know what, my job is actually secure. I actually feel comfortable. I don't think I'm going to get canned this year. I'm willing to spend a little bit more money to help my son or help my daughter afford that education that otherwise I was just going to send them to community college for.
Okay, so people are feeling more comfortable in their jobs, therefore they're willing to take a little more risk and take on some debt that they maybe weren't willing to take on before in order to help their children get better.
And the statistics still meet out despite all the negativity we hear in mainstream media that says college isn't worth it. I'm actually going to do a show tomorrow in this very studio on this topic.
Tell us a little bit about your show real quick.
It's called Ready, Set, College. It is a terrific 30-minute show that is produced here in this studio at the Vault. AP Productions, Furman Escobedo also working the cameras, doing a great job for our show. We're wrapping up our second season, and it's all things college knowledge. And so it seems appropriate as we get to the end of our season, we start talking about, is this investment really worth it?
That's one thing to take into consideration is college as an investment, right? You're investing in your children's future. They're investing in themselves. So the question is it worthwhile? And I'm actually the devil's advocate for that, right? Because I always say, hey, I didn't go to college. It wasn't for me, right? College wasn't for me. I tried it. It was frustrating. It wasn't an environment I wanted to be in. I already had my own business. I was more of an entrepreneurial person. It didn't work for me. So if you're extremely entrepreneurial, it probably isn't for you. But if you're someone who likes to learn and be in an environment where you need to be with a lot of social, a social interaction and learn to meet a lot of great people. That's the other thing too. It's a great networking thing. I know that people that have gone to college still today do great business because of the people they met in college.
At certain schools, even more so than the average. USC is a terrific example.
It's a great networking school, yeah.
One of the best networking schools in America. Versus my alma mater, UCLA, where I will tell you it's not as good.
Right.
It's a bit more, I don't want to say standoffish because that's not the right term, but it's a much more anonymous universe. You're talking about over 30,000 students on campus, so it's hard to maintain and build relationships, especially when many of your classes are quite large. But let's come back to this idea of student debt. So many of you are familiar with the California-based Corinthian colleges. Well, they filed bankruptcy not too long ago, and over 16,000 students have gone to our legislative body here asking for this debt to be removed. Essentially, they were sold fraudulent goods, that this institution of, quote, higher learning, which we now know it never was, offered something that was supposed to be a college education and offers job placement, and it was just bogus. This is going to open a much larger, deeper hole. As a matter of fact, when we look at the Department of Education, they just provided, like 2 weeks ago.
So this is hot off the presses.
Hot off the presses. They have provided guidance striking a balance between collecting on student loans and asking people, if it's not an extreme hardship, to pay their loans, i.e., there is a bankruptcy window that is starting to open on student loans. It's not open yet, but it may be coming very soon.
I think that's the most brilliant way to eliminate this future problem, and I know that bankruptcy has a negative connotation, Rob, and maybe we could do a show about that in and of itself on Ready, Set, College, because if that's a window that is going to open in the future, that's actually opportunity for people to not feel like they have this burden that they can never get rid of, and they'd like to pay the debt, but if they ever got in trouble, they want to be able to get rid of it through the bankruptcy protection laws. So thank you so much for joining me today, Rob. I really appreciate that we got an opportunity to talk about so many things, and in lieu of Don being here while he's out in Mexico having fun, riding his motorcycle is well deserved. And this was Rob Schwartz with Premier College Guidance joining me today and standing in for Don Getling. I hope you had a great time.
I had a fantastic time. Listeners, I hope you had a great time, and I hope you learned a lot. And I hope to hear you and see you again in the near future.
All right, so keep checking out the Don and Gino Real Estate and Finance Show every Saturday morning at 9 a.m. on your hometown station, AM 1220. We'll catch you next week.